Dear Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing to you. And may we be able to receive the message that you've prepared through Denise and through me. In Jesus' name, pray. Amen. Do not let your hearts be troubled. What do you do when you don't know what to do? What do you do when you're faced with uncertainty? When the road ahead is foggy or treacherous? What do you do when you are more than certain that whatever awaits you will be uncomfortable at best or disastrous at worst? How do you stand up in the face of that? Now, the person of faith will be faced with such situations time and again. We will be met with troubles we didn't see coming and that we don't at all understand. It's in those times that belief in God moves from being just a conviction that such a God exists to actual deliberate faith. We will have to rest on the assurance that everything will be all right, even if it's far from being all right now. We have to trust that what it looks like does not determine how it truly is. We are called in those times to put on the foolishness of faith and not lean on our understanding. But it would be so very helpful if, in the midst of our doubt, we could just have a sign that everything will be okay. And that's perfectly normal. Now, it's normal to want some extra assurance that the difficulty we encounter won't take us out. It's understandable that we would want confirmation that we are in a good place, especially when it doesn't exactly feel good. We find ourselves making bargains with God. Show me a sign. And God is often generous and will give us one. Now, it might be that rainbow that appears unexpectedly, or the fortune cookie that speaks specifically to you. It may be that profound tweet or Facebook message that a friend posts, almost if they had a glimpse into your life. Now, God is faithful in giving us those solemn moments. But sometimes what we need is not a sign. Sometimes what we need is to look around to what we've already been given. Now, Jesus was in the uncomfortable position of having to prepare disciples for his death. The time was nearing when he would complete the most important part of his ministry, the result of which would be for God's glory and for humanity's benefits. But in actuality, it would be a good thing, but it certainly wouldn't feel good. It would be painful, both for him and for them. It would be heartbreaking. And they would question everything that they had come to know up to that point. They would wonder if this Jesus they left everything to follow was indeed the real deal. And this was, to put it lightly, not going to be enjoyable. And yet, Jesus had this to say to them: do not let your hearts be troubled. Whatever would happen next, Jesus wanted them to remain encouraged, because if nothing else, their place was still secured. They were still a part of God's house. They were still guaranteed a dwelling place with God. They would still be taken care of. Now, in fact, Jesus was going to make sure of it. He was going to prepare that dwelling and make sure everything was in place for them. He wasn't going to leave it to anyone else. He was going to do it. And he was going to come back and get them. And that was a promise. Now, the disciples were understandably confused by all of this. And Thomas asked, how can we know the way? Philip wanted him to show them the Father. Then they would be satisfied. It would make more sense that way. Sometimes despair and confusion leads us to seek more answers rather than resting in the ones we already have. They wanted to know more. They were frightened. They were bewildered. And Jesus was talking a bit crazy now. What were they to make of all of this? Now, some were saying, show us. Show us the way you are going. Show us the Father. Show us something that gives us a bit more information than you're currently giving us. Give us more hints. Allay our fears. Help us really know that it will be all right. But Jesus was essentially saying, I'm all that you need. Now, that might have been little consolation to some confused and worried disciples, but it was the truth. They wanted the Father, but the Father was always with them in the Son. They wanted to know the way, but they had already been shown the way. Now, when we are faced with an uncertain and seemingly bleak future, we must rest on what we have. What we have are the lessons from our teacher. What we have is the promise that there is a place for us. We have power even when we feel powerless because we have Christ. And honestly, that should be enough. It should be enough because of our history with God. It should be enough because of the many times God has already delivered on our behalf before. It's okay to pull from your past for strength to face your future. Think of how you've been loved and cared for up to this point. It hurts to feel like we're alone, especially when we have a difficult situation to tackle. But look at what Jesus said to his disciples. He was going back to the Father, but what that actually meant was that they could do greater things than he did on earth, because now they had an advocate with the Father who would work tirelessly on their behalf. While he had to leave them physically, his Spirit would also always be with them. We have greater power than the disciples did in those days because we have Christ in a greater capacity than they did. Jesus was telling them that when they felt alone, when Jesus' absence was most palpable and noticeable, when they missed having their teacher with them at every turn, that was only because he was in a greater position to help them. His apparent absence meant that he was more present with them than he'd ever been before. If at any point the immediate future is intimidating, let's rely on what God has shown us up to this point. Now recognize that God has been with you all of this time. And believe. Believe because Jesus is in the Father and the Father is in him. Believe because of the many things he has done for us. And most importantly, believe that at no point Christ has ever left you. At no point has Christ's power ever left you. At no point has Christ's love ever left. And it never will. May you have peace and assurance in your most trying of days. May you understand the power you have because of the Christ you have. May God show you afresh how deeply and profoundly you are loved. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Let's sing the hymn of response, hymn number 624.
We'll be singing verses 1 through 4. Please stand for our anthem.
Turned in every place. So come, O King, and our whole being sway. Shine on us with the light of your day. Thou art the life by which alone we live. And Lord, our substance and our strength receive. Sustain us by thy faith and by thy power, and give us strength in every trying hour. Thou hast a true and perfect gentleness. No harshness hast thou, and no bitterness. Oh, grant to us the grace we find in Thee, that we may dwell in perfect